Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new episode of Relevation Talk, new season 23, starting with one of my favorite person in the PropTech ecosystem in Europe, I think, Tanja from Nemechek Group. And so we have 30 minutes of her time to ask her all of the most burning questions that we would like to ask to try to make her sweat a little bit while she's on the grill, although the purpose is not to challenge her, but more to understand or lessons learned, right? So welcome to the grill, Tanja.
It's wonderful to see you as always, Idris. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So why don't we start with maybe you giving a bit of context for the one who don't know you yet, about your background, maybe your journey into venture.
It's a funny one. I don't know. Probably it's the same for everyone. My journey into venture was a pure accident. Um, I started out building my first company. After 10 years in San Francisco, I had the opportunity to build a competition for the Deutsche Telekom when the telecom markets deregulated. I was given a business plan and a big budget, and that's when I learned that I love building companies. And so I started building the first telecom operator for British Telecom in Germany. And then I also learned that when companies go big and they get political, I don't have the right DNA. I don't really belong there. And so by accident, I quit there, stayed at home, had my second child, and was called by a bunch of people who were thinking about launching funds. And this is now 1997, and I fell into it by pure accident through friends. And I've been an investor since that time, so almost 30 years. Yep, I've seen a lot of cycles. It's been really interesting. I've done about, I think, 91 transactions to date.
Wow. Okay, and
Yeah.
lots of lessons from what worked and what didn't, I guess. But before we get into this, I often hear the advice you should once go to San Francisco or Silicon Valley or areas like this where you have such a high level of energy. When you come back, then you really have the feeling you can change the world. Was it something that marked you back in the days? It was
You know
maybe
what? It really
different
did. And I
economy,
have
but
to tell you, my heart aches a little bit because I moved to California when I was 17.
wow.
And I kind of ran away from home after my A levels, and I did something different than what my dad had in mind. And
Yeah.
I only wanted to go for 2 years. So I stayed in San Diego for 2 years, and I moved to San Francisco for 9 years. But remember, this is 1984 to 1994. It was a very different
Of
Silicon
course.
Valley back then.
Yeah.
And it really was everything you wanted it to be. You imagine. I mean, it was like a tiny ecosystem. Everybody had everyone's cell phone number. If I needed Larry Ellison to come and speak at my business school, I could call him up and he would show up. You know, it was a very tight, tiny ecosystem.
Mm.
And it was also the place where I learned how to become an adult. I became a woman. I became a mother. I bore my first child there. I did my MBA. I had a scholarship. I did my first consulting gigs. So it was like my happy place.
Yeah.
And it was such a wonderful phase and time in my life. You will never believe what comes now. I've never gone back
Yeah, of
because I
course.
never wanted to see it change. And so when I left in 1994 and I moved to Europe, I've been to the States 1,000 times, but I've never gone back to San Francisco because I
You
don't
don't
want
want
to
to touch
see
the
what it's
dreams.
become.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? It will
yeah.
ruin so much of my
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful
yeah,
memory from there. So,
exactly. Totally
but I will
understand.
one day. I really have to.
Good. So, if we do a couple of years of fast track, you arrive to Nemechek. So, can you tell us maybe like what was the journey there? So, why? I mean, maybe explain what is your role there actually, right? And also explain maybe the different activities, what excites you, maybe in terms of geographies, ticket size, investment themes, etc.
Yeah. So I joined Nemechek during COVID, during the lockdown. My history we can talk about another time, but I'm used to running global accelerator programs where I'm really close to founders and helping support them on their early journeys until they take money from somebody. And one of my biggest thesis in history used to be the first kiss of death for any startup is working with a corporate. And here I am today talking to you as a corporate venture. So I'm eating my own dog food. But I'll tell you about that journey later. Let's talk about what we do today. So I joined Nemechek 2 years ago, where the board hired me and said, we want to start investing in startups. And I said, well, what's the purpose? Why? And there's still to this date isn't 100% clarity around it. They're like, well, just go do it and then tell us, what we should be doing. So I think the purpose of a corporate venture has many facets, but one of them, of course, is to show the organization where there's disruption happening in their world, right? You look at a lot of the software companies the NEMETSCHEK Group has. There's 13 amazing brands that are still, in some ways, and I hope I get forgiven for this, a little bit old school, right? They're going through their own SaaS transformation. These are old software perpetual license agreements. And my job is to go out there and find the disruptors that will eat us for breakfast in a couple of years. So that's how I see my role. At the same time, what we like to do is invest across the entire life cycle. So if you look at Nemechek Group, we have a lot of planning and design brands. We have a Bluebeam for building and construction, and we have a couple of brands in operate and manage. And what Nemechek has been in the past is they've been a financial holding. They're great at buying companies. So last night at Super Return, when I met with some of the VCs, they're like, oh, I know exactly which company to sell to you, in the next 2 years. So starting venture activities is slightly different, right?
Exactly.
And then you take an animal like me that's always been very founder friendly, and you put her in a corporate venturing unit, and you try to make that work, right? So I try to be a really good corporate, and I said this to my board when they hired me. I said, be prepared that we're going to be a decent and a good corporate when it comes to investing in the cap table. So what do we like? We like everything in AECO. I've done more in architecture, planning, and design, and in build and construct than I have on the PropTech side, if you define PropTech, operate, and manage. We do stage agnostic. So I started out doing my first Series A, then I did a Series B, and then I would say almost only Series A. Now we've ventured down to seed and early stage, and I just closed a Series D. So we're kind of stage agnostic. There are 9 investments we can publicly talk about that you'll see eventually. Once I have a little bit of time, I'll actually build a website and I'll talk about what we do. At the moment, we're just too busy because we're a tiny team, right? I was 18 months, I was by myself, and now we have Naveen. So we're a very lean team. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
And stage. So also geographically, we've gone all over the map. We're pretty much global. Yeah. I haven't done anything in Latin America, and nothing in China and Asia yet.
So it seems you have really like full autonomy of decision of what excites you, all categories, all asset classes, all stage of maturity, all geographies. So it's really there is no predefined spectrum saying, hey, Nemechek Group needs to expand in the US, so we will acquire some shares in a potential champion category leader there in order to incorporate in the rest of Nemechek Group, etc. But so it's pretty free from what I understand.
It's a total, I have to say, it's a privilege to be investing right now in these times. Absolutely. And I'm sure that, if there's a change in strategy or in geographical focus, or maybe let's start focusing later stage when the timing is right, maybe that will come and then we'll execute if it makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Now, I would like also to understand a bit more the sourcing. So how do you look at sourcing? Because you also have some requirements of capital to deploy. It's not only investing. You must source the right deals, the good deals that excite you, etc. So how is it that you do? What's your sourcing strategy? How do you build relations with founders? Do you try maybe to identify them super early stage? So when they will raise capital, you're the first one that they think of? Or how do you look at this as a founder-friendly CVC?
Thank you for the good question. Yes, of course. Probably one of the best ways to start is to build relationships with some of the vertically focused funds.
Okay.
I think that's a great way to start. It's not because you need to learn how to do venture. It's because you want access to the deal flow, right? I've spent the last 10 to 15 years in a different vertical. It's similar, but it's more urban. It's more mobility, energy infrastructure, urban cities, sustainable cities. So if you want to get into the architecture, and obviously you need to tap into someone else's deal flow. So we invest in funds. In a vertically focused fund. That relationship is wonderful. I hope we'll be open to investing in more funds to give us access to different geographies or different verticals. And then also reaching out to founders and building a network. The nice thing is, the minute I posted on LinkedIn 2 years ago that I joined NEMETSCHEK Group, I know so many VCs my whole life that they literally throw me everything, right? So I get a lot of inbound from the network in itself as well. Yeah. And from the portfolio companies, now we have enough that even they start to refer founders to us.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about the pitfalls that come with that in a minute. I'm sure you'll ask me that question.
And actually, it's maybe now the right time to ask it, because, but maybe just a comment before that we go on your pitfalls. It's more about, from my perspective, I think urban tech, so including mobility, including energy, maybe also some adjacent verticals like agri or agriculture or agri-tech or food tech or stuff like this, is a natural extension of PropTech, because PropTech was innovations within square meters, inside indoor, inside buildings, etc. But you have to take a bit of altitude and considers that to make resilient cities, livable, lovable cities, etc., we have to manage innovations at the landscape of a piece of neighborhood or a city. So it's urban tech, so it's not only prop tech. So I think it's actually a quality that you have to have a background from the other spectrum of urban tech. So I think it's very valuable. Maybe a question that I have for you is more on the so I have the feeling that like maybe the downside of being a VC. I have the feeling that once you become a VC, maybe one risk is that you assess any aspect of your daily life in terms of ROI. What is the risk? What is the potential benefits? Not financially, but all of the potential metrics. So maybe you lose a bit of spontaneity in the way you look at life, at opportunities, at events in your life, etc. So is it something that that you have seen in the course of your life so far, that you changed the way you assess opportunities, always seeking to decrease risks and increasing the potential returns in whatever metrics they are?
I think, to be honest with you, even though I've done this for a very long time, I have not yet worked ever, I believe, for a fund that was 100% measured on ROI and had an IRR goal. I've always been really lucky. So either it's been very strategic, or I've been so seed and early stage that my metric has always been different.
Yeah.
And so it could change that if you ask me in 2 years where Nemechek Ventures is, that maybe it'll have changed as well. But at the moment, I'm not being measured on IRR and ROI. My biggest value that I bring to the company is investing in a whole bunch of disruptors going forward. I'm not being measured on their financial success. If you look at the history of CVC, they usually all start this way, right? And then that level of financial metric, it keeps growing, and eventually a lot of them, become a financially returned organization. But I'm at the beginning, and so no, not yet. And the beauty, I think, for me being an early stage investor is just helping, right? Helping the founders. Everybody says that. Every VC will tell you that they help founders, right? And how does a corporate help? And we can talk about that later. But I think experience and just history, just having seen a lot of falls, failures, mistakes, maybe that's helpful to the one or other. Yeah.
Okay, clear. So you mentioned that you really want to help, and it's also one of the reasons why I'm a fan of you, if I can say this publicly in a way, because I think you are a good person with great values. And so, can you maybe explain to us what are your values? What are your drivers? What are your criteria of to behave well and to be well with yourself? What are your values?
I think, first of all, I did have a startup, but it was someone else's idea that I executed on. I think I have so much respect for founders that are trying to solve meaningful problems, right? And I've been surrounded by them for the last 25 years. And so I think for me, I've been fortunate enough to always be a positive person in their life and not be a bad investor and like put them through the ringer. But I've always been fortunate enough to be a great partner by their side, right? Especially through the years of running accelerator programs. So my biggest, I guess, my personal values is all around, giving back. So I'm very optimistic. I'm a little bit of a very resilient person. I believe in good karma, right? So I believe is what you give is what comes back to you. I think I've been a very young mom. I had my first kid at the age of 22. So family is huge to me. So maybe I treat my cohorts a bit too much like a family, but a lot of these values, positive thinking and resilience and optimism and what you give comes back to you multitude-fold. That's kind of my philosophy, right? And that's what.
Yeah, I love it. And I
Can't
think
get it out of my DNA, I guess. Optimism, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
but this is really an amazing, I think, set of values. I mean, because I think founders must really understand that when they accept a VC in their cap table or any sort of investor, of course they will lose shares. In exchange, they will get capital, but they will also lose power. They will have to invest a bit of time in IR, etc., etc. And so having someone which is not a typical arrogant VC, because there is so much arrogant VC also available in the market, it's really valuable to have someone with great values. So I think it's important for founders to understand that when they do the due diligence on their investors, they should also assess the values of the people, because otherwise it's a lot of potential headaches. So now you invest in a startup. How do you work with the founders? Like, do you have a plan? Do you always take a seat in the board? How do you work?
That's the hard part. Because I've never been in a situation where I don't have all the resources I need, right? So in this new life at Nemechek, we do help the founders as much as we can, but I don't really have the bandwidth to do what I would love to do. So if you ask me what I would love to do for value creation, I would love to build a team. I'd know exactly what I would like to do, to support the founders more. At the moment, I'm a little bit left because then I need to hand them over. It's almost like when you run an accelerator program, right? You become their best friends for 3 months, but then you have to let them fly because the new cohort comes in.
Yeah.
At this point, I probably have to hand them off to different divisions. So sometimes we take board seats, sometimes we don't. And it's not me that goes into the board of the company. Usually it's, which is a fantastic thing. You have the deep experts in the Nemechek family. So for example, when we did Reconstruct, John Elliott, who's the CEO of Bluebeam, he's on the board of Reconstruct, which is fantastic, right? And then we have wonderful people like Matt, who's the senior vice president of construction. He goes onto the board. Like, he's deep knowledge, he's deep experience in construction tech. So he supports the founders, and probably, in my opinion, better than I could. If they need me for that startup-y stuff and either to shoulder to cry on or something to bitch and complain about, they can always call me, right? But when it comes to the technical expertise, and I think this is one of the only joys of being a corporate, is that deep domain knowledge. So, I told you about my hypothesis: never take money from a startup or from a corporate, right? I'm learning that maybe I'm not always right about that thesis. I've been busy trying to spend at least 10 years of my career building something that refutes that theory. But it's actually interesting. So some founders really love, and I ask them this every time, I'm like, are you sure you want a strategic in your cap table at this point? Because this could be harmful to you. There are VCs out there that will tell you not to do it.
Of course.
So
we know the typical problems like conflict of interest. You're perceived by the market as a subsidiary of the corporates, or they consider you as a subsidiary of their own fund, so they want to influence roadmap. Or we have like so many typical examples, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
And you spoke about resilience, so I would like also to hear your thoughts about the importance of doubts. So it's also a philosophical question almost, but like, are you sometimes doubting yourself, your choices, or what is the frequency of these doubts? Should we listen to our doubts, or should we continue to fight? Because I was speaking about this with one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Belgium, I think, Eric Evra from Easy Fairs. So they organize summits. They have 800 employees. And so he was saying you have a really small um, uh, like nuance between like determination and subordinate subordorm, like when you become a bit crazy and you become a bit fool because you continue to be resilient and you don't want to see the reality, and so you have a small balance between these two, a small barrier. So is doubt something important for you, and how do you look at doubt?
I've It's interesting. I'm very different. I'm not a person. Once I make a decision, I stick by my decision and I stay with it. And if something comes along and I realize I made a bad choice or I made a bad decision and I'm no longer happy and something is happening that it's eating me up, or I realize this is untenable, I don't spend a lot of time doubting. I get out. Like I change. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
and it doesn't happen very often. So I don't spend time doubting. You know, there might be a situation here or there where you're like, oh, I wish things would be slightly different, But if you have a problem, then go out and solve it. If you're not happy with something or you doubt something, then it's your responsibility to do something about it, in my opinion. It's like, stop moping, stop complaining. If you doubt what you did,
change. Yeah,
you need to change something, then go out and do
yeah,
it. All you can do is ask.
yeah,
And the worst thing that can happen to you is that somebody will say no. And then you can always think about what those consequences need to be in that case. But spending time doubting, I don't have time for that. And honestly, I don't want it. It ruins my energy level. Like, why would I spend time with that? If, like I said,
yeah, totally agree. Okay, same mindset. Um, so you mentioned 91 deals, if I remember, that you closed. So maybe a bit of question on how do you assess quality of people? Um, how do you conduct HR due diligence? Is it
yeah,
something that are there any things that you're excited about or red flags?
this is fun. So at Nemechek, I don't have the luxury or time to do what we used to do, right? When I was running 7 years of accelerator programs, some of our programs, including mine, would spend a fortune. I spent, I think, close to 10,000 per team doing really detailed team analysis from facet 5. Because if you're investing in super early stage founders, all you have is team, team, team,
Mm,
right? There's no product. So you really have to make sure that the founders are not, you don't test them so much for resilience. Of course you do at some point when they're combined and they're as a team and they're together. But you look at the team dynamics and
yeah,
everything. And having been fortunate enough to apply these kinds of really amazing team tests, I don't think a lot of funds do that. Yeah. But you develop a bit of a gut feeling, right? And I mean, I have a really good nose for people, right? I smell the not so good ones a mile away. And that's something that I don't know. Maybe it's being almost 60 that you just develop that over the course of a lifetime.
mm,
Um, but yes, of course. I mean, obviously we look at the team, but not in the same way that we used to in my history.
yeah,
Um, and there is a huge team risk. A lot of funds try their best to do it, but teams will blow up. Sometimes teams blow up. Sometimes you lose a co-founder. Sometimes you lose a CTO.
yeah, of
Sometimes you
course.
fall out, and oftentimes, especially later stage VCs will want you out as a founder because they
Yeah.
want to scale your business, and then they'll deem you no longer capable of doing so.
No, of course,
And how do you
you're
deal
the
with that?
good one to bring the company from 1 to 10 FTEs, but not from 10 to 100, for instance.
Yeah.
But this is what our friend Nicolas Samias from PropTech One was saying, that you don't have business problems, you only have people problems in companies. So
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm also curious to understand, because you mentioned now you don't do this sort of, or not always this sort of in-depth team dynamics due diligence. So um, can you clarify a bit your approach in business? So how do you, let's imagine you engage with interesting founders,
Mhm.
you are positive about the opportunity. So what are the next phases? You bring this to the IC committee, you do due diligence, you sign LOI. Is there any specific thing, and how long does it take roughly?
Yeah.
Like, how do you operate?
So when I did the first two deals, I was terribly slow because I assumed that I needed to do a proper financial due diligence. There were no other co-investors. I was
Mm,
terribly slow. Like my first deal was a train wreck. Like I apologized to the founders. You know who you are. But we managed to get it done. We're learning every day, and we're getting better at it. But we're taking the company on a journey, right? Dealing with open innovation and dealing with startups is also a part of the transformation for a corporate.
yeah.
What we usually do is we're now much faster. We're pretty much in line with VCs. We can do things in 6 to 8 weeks from meeting a founder to closing. It depends on the stage also, right? If it's a 5-8 million check and company's making more than 1 million in revenue, you obviously need to deliver some financial due diligence, right?
Yeah.
But let's assume almost 90% of our deals are quick and early. We meet the founders once or twice. We love them. We take it to the business unit. We let the business unit people have a
Okay.
conversation with the founders. They usually enjoy that both sides because it gets really technical.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get feedback from the business units, and the business units say, great, wonderful, keep going. Naveen and I will do the usual, right? We'll issue a term sheet, we'll start negotiating. Ideally, we're a part of a conglomerate. We're not the only investors, so either we'll follow or we'll just find other investors to go along this journey with. And then we're pretty quick. What's really fun is the evolution. In the past, if a business unit says no, I have to pass. The wonderful thing is that's no longer the case, right? So
Okay.
now we can listen to the feedback from the business unit, which is great. But if they say no, and we love the founder and the value proposition, I'm still going to invest, right? Which is,
Yeah.
I like that. It makes me happy.
Yeah, of course, because you have full ownership of the, and you're fully accountable. So yeah, that's great.
And the confirmation bias, that happens from a business unit. You also, you have so many brands that are thinking what they want to do one day, but I think my job is to build a great portfolio and firewall them for the future,
Yeah.
and bring them into the Nemechek portfolio as they grow. And I want
But
as many disruptors to be down here as possible, right?
you have a lot of sovereign funds, and especially also EIF, etc. That like for them, it's a deal breaker to invest in a GP where the investment manager is also part of the IC investment committee, because you have the
Mm.
bias of like the person cannot like he's biased because he loves the founders, and so he doesn't want to see some risk related to the product or the market or other things like this. So but you have full freedom there, so this is really great. It's
I'm very
like,
fortunate, to be honest. I'm very grateful that they trust us like this. We're in the process of thinking about putting in an investment committee because at the moment we still have a bit of a process that we inherited from M&A. So maybe now we'll make it leaner, quicker, and just involve 2 or 3 people and actually do a formal investment committee. It's
yeah,
just you need a team of people to do that, right? You need a small army, and with 1.5 or 2 people, you
yeah.
have to see how much work you can do. Yeah.
Great. And when I was speaking, I just realized it's an LP that can never be in the investment committee, not the IM. But I think anyway, the point is made. I'm also curious maybe about your dream list. So let's you now have 9 portfolio companies with Nemechek that you can publicly speak about.
Mhm.
Is there anything missing? Is there anything like you really dream that you would have in your
Mm.
portfolio? Any like Christmas dream investment theme?
I would love, I mean, one of the biggest things for me has been sustainability, right? I've done nothing but sustainability in the past, but you didn't call it that. But I would love to do more there. I would love to look at materials. I would love to look at more hardware-driven
Great.
businesses. I believe the sustainability comes a lot from operate and manage. This has been an area we haven't done that much, and that's just due to the fact that we haven't had a real big organization there. But I believe, obviously, I know a lot about energy and infrastructure and energy refurbishment and IoT, and I do this for the European Commission for a long time. I would love to see that all come together, like the whole history of mobility and urban tech and planning and automotive and mobility in future cities. And yeah, so I would love to do even more on the sustainability side, to be honest.
Okay, great. And that's actually quite a punchline, if I may say, because of course, Nemechek is a pure software player. It's a number one exit partner, our dream exit partner from many founders, right? We have also a lot of examples in Belgium and Netherlands of companies that were acquired by Nemechek. So pure B2B SaaS company, and now that could also be excited about hardware or low carbon materials or offsite construction or biosource materials. So totally on the opposite of the spectrum. So it's something
But Idris, that's just
interesting.
me. I have to
Yeah,
probably
of
check
course.
it with, the chairman of the
Of
board. I
course.
don't know how they see it, but this is something I would get excited about, especially
Yeah.
being in a Nemechek position, right? I
But
think
this
when I
is
was
a
first
question
hired,
for you.
yeah, one of the board members said, theoretically, the reason why you're here is you need to invest in companies that maybe one day we will have a whole new business unit that we don't even have today. And with that line of thinking, I'm very optimistic and hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We come gradually to an end of this session, although I could ask you hundreds of other questions. So maybe one of the last key question. So like maybe just understanding a bit more your views on the link between impact and real estate. So we all know the environmental impact of construction and real estate. We know where the greenhouse gas emissions come from, etc. So let's not repeat this, but maybe let me challenge you, if I may, on like what is the link between the social impact and real estate? Like because you mentioned in sustainability, you're very excited and you have a whole new a very rich background. And what about the social impact? Is it also something that would excite you? Is it also something that you're interested about? Do you have specific views on this? So
Yeah,
open question.
I do. I'm not 100% sure how they will fit into the Nemechek family, because again, I spend all my time in the pre-planning and construction until the buildings are built, and I haven't done the real estate side. I know we look at well-being and we look at all these kinds of things that once people are in building, but the social aspect, to be honest with you, I don't believe that we have looked at that from a VC perspective. I have some thoughts on it. I think the hard part is how do you measure it, right? Like, who measures it? Who's responsible for measuring the social impact on not just buildings, but how cities are built? I think that's interesting. In my previous world at Startup Bootcamp, we would see a lot more, people tackling this and how to measure it and what to do and how to go about it. Now I just get to dabble a little bit, but this is one of the sad things, is I've been asked to join the advisory board of some of these impact funds or to join a digital advisory, and and even helping others. And these are my favorite people that I would love to help. But that bucket is shut, for the last year and a half because there's just no time, right? You're working weekends. And so unfortunately, hopefully that will change. But then I would love to go back and help these social impact funds and organizations and go back to supporting there a little bit. I miss it.
That's great. That's clear.
Yeah.
This was Tanja Kufner from the NEMETSCHEK Group. Thank you so much for your time.
Lovely to see you, Idris. Thank you for the time.
We see
So
each
lovely to
other
see you
soon. Bye.
Bye. Take care.